This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. This is our last Shiur on Sefer Devarim. So the Shiurim on Sefer Devarim were again generously sponsored by Dr. Zakheim Umeshpachta, Leiloi Nishmas, Reb Shlomo Eliezer ben Rabbi Yaakov Zakheim, and Rivka, Leiloi Nishmas, Dr. Zakheim's mother Rivka, Bas Tuvia Halevi, Began Eden Teim Nuchasam. They should be Melitzer Yisham for the whole families. Adbias Goyal Tzedek. Tonight's Shiur is dedicated anonymously, all the way from Eretz Yisrael. Also, it's dedicated by Mr. Adam Grossman from Newton, Massachusetts, in memory of his father, David Grossman, and father-in-law, Elias Cohen, Zechron Levracha. Okay. Now, before we start, if you didn't yet get your Mystery and the Majesty, it's available here. Right now, it's out of print. Can't get it from our scroll. We have a few copies left. You could get it here at the Shiur. Okay, so this year, the first night of Sukkos, we have a unusual occurrence, somewhat unusual. The first night of Sukkos comes out on Shabbos, and which means the first day of Sukkos also comes out on Shabbos. What a coincidence! The first night of Sukkos comes out on Shabbos. Also, the first day comes out on Shabbos. So we know the first day you're going to come to shul. Leave your lulav at home, leave your esrog at home, also your hadassim and your aravos. Leave them all at home. And also the esrog box, don't bring that either. You leave it all at home. We do not take lulav and esrog on Shabbos. The same reason we don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. Why don't we blow the shofar on Shabbos? Rabba's gezerah. Rabba's decree. What was Rabba's decree? Shema Yavirenu Daled Amos. By the way, now I'm really understanding. The Gemara says that Sanulek Kulab Masa de Pampadisa. The people didn't really like Rabbah. You can imagine when he said, no shofar on Shabbos, everybody knows our lives are dependent on the shofar. I don't think that was a very popular announcement from the pulpit, no shofar on Shabbos. Then 2 weeks later he said, by the way, also no lulav and esrog on Shabbos. That probably didn't go over too well either. So these were all gezerah de Rabbah. This year, for the first time, the following question hit me. And I have to share with you something interesting. Usually if you are bothered by a question, if you have a question, you want to find someone who doesn't ask it, someone who asks the question. If nobody asks the question, then usually there's a good reason that nobody asks the question. But I was troubled by the following question. We don't take a lulav and esrog when the first day of Sukkot comes out on Shabbos. We're afraid Shema Yavirenu Daled Amos. You might carry the lulav and esrog 4 cubits. You might have a question about the lulav, about whether the spine, the shidra, whether the tiyomis is complete, whether it's sealed on top. You might have a question about your esrog. There's a spot on it. There's a niche in it. There's the aravos are a little bit torn, or the hadassim don't cover, the leaves don't cover the bud on top of it. You may have a particular question. You may take it to a baki. You may take it to a rav and ask a question, and you might carry. So out of concern, lest you come to carry, we say you don't take lulav and esrog on Shabbos. You don't blow the shofar on Shabbos. You don't lay Megillas Esther on Shabbos. So for the first time in my entire life, the following question hit me. Are we going to sit in the Sukkah the Shabbos? Yeah. Why? Why aren't we afraid that somebody might have a question, I don't know, about a type of material or about their sukkah, and they might carry Daled Amos? So you say, carry what? Carry what? So I said, well, maybe you have a question. It's not like you're going to carry the sukkah. It's not like you could carry a sukkah. But let's say you used a certain material for schach, and you didn't know if the schach was good or not, and you happen to have a piece of it with you. Why are we afraid? You're going to take this piece of schach and bring it to a baki and ask them, is this kosher for a sukkah or is this not kosher? I mean, we get rid of shofar, we get rid of lulav and esrog, we get rid of Megillah. How did sukkah remain standing? Why is sukkah not subject to the gezerah of Rabbah? That's the question that I had. And sure enough, I looked around, and nobody asked the question. I looked around and I asked Talmidei Chachamim, did you ever hear anybody ask the question? No, they never heard anybody ask the question. Simply, the gezerah is you might take the item of a mitzvah and show it to a baki, but it's not like you could carry a sukkah with you. But then I was thinking, yeah, but maybe in zeal for the mitzvah, why aren't we afraid you're going to carry your meal to the sukkah? Why aren't we afraid you're going to carry your meal to the sukkah? Why don't we say you can sit in a sukkah? I mean, isn't that very common? Let's say the sukkah is not attached to your house. Let's say it's down the block. So why aren't we afraid you're going to bring your sandwich and you're going to bring your soup and carry it to your sukkah? Why doesn't the Gezerah of Rabbah apply to the sukkah? That's my question. Okay? And as we're going to see, I did find that in fact the Achronim asked this question. But first I want to show you an anomaly in Parshas Emor. Okay?
Why don't you ask a better question or a different question? Why are you afraid you're going to be misake in the sukkah if you find out that it's puzzle on Shabbos? Which, like, we don't go on a boat or we don't ride.
Okay.
Well, we don't do those things because you're afraid you're going to fix it.
Hang on to that.
That's more likely to happen than...
Hang on to that question. We're going to come back to it. Okay? Because you could ask a similar question by shofar. Why are we only worried that you might carry the shofar? Why don't we say like we do with every musical instrument, you can't use a musical instrument on Shabbos because lest you come to fix it. You know, why can't you blow a trumpet on Shabbos? It might break and you might fix it. So why don't we say the same thing with the shofar? It's a musical instrument, it might break and you might fix it. So that's also a question, and we could apply it to Sukkah as well. We're going to come back to that question. What's your name again? David. We have proof that you attended this year now, okay? In case...
I have to stay to the end.
You do. That you do. Okay. Now, so I want to point out a few important observations in the Psukim and Parshas Emor. Turn to your second sheet, okay, where you have the Psukim Parshas Emor. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe leimar. Daber al bnei Yisrael leimar. Speak to the Jewish people and saying, B'chamisha asar yom lachodesh hashviyi hazeh. On the 15th day of this 7th month. Now, the word hazeh is an unusual word. It didn't have to say this 7th month. Obviously, if it's the 7th month, it's this 7th month. Not every time the Torah talks about a month, it says hazeh. What do you do on this day? Chag HaSukkos. It's the Yom Tov of Sukkos. What do you do? B'yom harishon mikra kodesh kamlechas avodah lasasu. Shivas yamim, bring karbanos. What else do you do? Eile moyedei Hashem asher tigros mikra kodesh. Milavad Shabbosos Hashem. Fine. So in other words, what do you do on Sukkos? All the psukim say is Chag HaSukkos Shivas Yamim Hashem. You sit in the sukkah. Did you notice? It doesn't say a word about the Dal Minim. Isn't that interesting? The Torah tells us that on the 15th day of this 7th month, it's the Yom Tov of Sukkos. Yeah, what about the Esrog? Nah, we forgot about that. What about the Aravos? No. What about the lulav? The dairy lulav is going to cost you at least $60, and the Esrog, you could get one for $150, but it's not going to be kosher unless you spend, No, not a word about the Daled Minim. Oh, by the way, look in Pasuk Lamed Tes. B'chamisha asa yom lachodesh hashavi, and this time it doesn't say hazeh. When you gather the food, tachoigu es chag Hashem shivas yamim. B'yom harishon Shabboson, don't do melach on the first day. V'yom hashmini Shabboson, don't do melach on the 8th day. And you know what you should do? Ulekachtem lechem hayom harishon prietz hadar, the esrog kapos tamarim, the lulav anaf eitz avos aravos the hadasim arvei nachal the aravos. And you should celebrate 7 days, and Basukos Teishu Shivas Yamim. What in the world is going on over here? Why does the Torah break up the Yom Tov of Sukkos into 2 parts? First it says, on the 15th day of this 7th month, 7 days, what do? Sit in the sukkah. Daled Minim, not a word. And the first time it talks about Sukkos, it says, B'chodesh hashvi hazeh, this 7th month. And when it talks about this, it doesn't say anything about Daled Minim. Then it says, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you, there's something called Sukkos. When is it? The 15th day of the 7th month. So why is it repeating it again? Why the second time it doesn't say hazeh? And why the second time does it say Daled Minim with Sukkah? So it actually, in these Psukim and Emor, it talks about Sukkos twice. The first time it says hazeh. The first time it only talks about Sukkah. The second time it doesn't say hazeh, and it talks about both mitzvahs. It's a pella. What in the world is going on over here? So there's a drasha from the Oineg Yom Tov, and many other Svarim bring this down as well. And this is a very important yediyah. You ready for this yediyah? You ready there? It's called Atbash. the first day of Pesach, whatever the first day of Pesach is, that same day will be Tisha B'Av. Okay, so whatever night of the year is Pesach, let's say Pesach is a Tuesday, Aleph, Tisha B'Av will be Tuesday that year. The second day of Pesach, Beis, Shin, will be Shavuos. Gimel, the third day, Reish, will be Rosh Hashanah. Every time. Aleph, Tisha B'Av. Beis, Shavuos. Gimel, Rosh Hashanah. Fine. Anybody know the year the Jews left Egypt? What day of the week was it? Groundhog's Day. No, what day of the week? What day of the week was it? Thursday. It was Thursday. Because everyone agrees that Torah was given on Shabbos, on the 51st day of the Omer. Hakol moedim de b'Shabbos nitna Torah. So the Jewish people left Mitzrayim on a Thursday, which means that year Tisha B'Av was a Thursday. That year Shavuos was Friday Shabbos, because the Torah was given the next day. Yeah, Torah wasn't given on Shavuos the first year, and Rosh Hashanah was Shabbos. Hear this? Pesach was a Thursday, so Tisha B'Av was a Thursday. Second day of Pesach was a Friday, Shavuos was a Friday. Third day of Pesach was Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah was Shabbos. Which means the first year they left Mitzrayim, they didn't blow the shofar. If you say that the Gezerah of Rabbah was very early in history, which Rabbi Yosef Engel says it always existed. So if they didn't, now if Rosh Hashanah is Shabbos, what day is Sukkos? This is not complicated. Also Shabbos. Yeah? Sukkos is Shabbos. Which means, what didn't they take that year? Lulav and Esrog. The Psukim read like a glove. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemar. Daber el bnei Yisrael lemar. B'chamisha asar yom lachodesh hashvi hazeh. This year, you know what you do? Sit in the Sukkah. Daled minim. Who said anything about Daled minim? No Daled minim. You say, what do you mean, the second day? No, that's midrabanan. That didn't exist yet. The mitzvah drabanan of Daled minim did not exist beyond the first day. So there was no Daled minim that year. By the way, in general, typically in the 7th month on the 15th day, you do two things. You sit in the Sukkah and you take the Daled minim. So the Psukim read like a glove. The Psukim are wondrous. Okay, so the Torah breaks up Sukkos into two parts. One is Sukkos year 1, and one is Sukkos in subsequent years. You Sukkos in year 1, you only sit in the Sukkah. Why not Daled minim? Shema yavirenu Daled amos. But in subsequent years, so it doesn't come out on Shabbos. Subsequent years you're going to sit in the Sukkah and you're going to take the Daled minim. Okay.
Does that apply to anything else that first year? I mean, what happened with Rosh Hashanah that first?
So Rosh Hashanah also, l'chayra, it says Zichroin Trua, not Yom Trua. You can remember the Trua, but you're not going to actually blow the shofar. Okay, fine. So now one thing we know for sure. What we know is that the Gezerah of Shema Yavirenu Daled amos applies to the lulav and it does not apply to the Sukkah. The question is, does anybody ask this question? So I found this morning, I wasn't even sure what I was going to talk about. Usually by now I have a topic. So, I could always go to old Shiurim, but, the people who've been listening for a while, they get tired of the old Shiurim. So it's preferable to come up with new material, Recycle, people don't like to recycle. And they don't like when other people recycle. But, so I found the Pardes Yosef. Now the Pardes Yosef is what we call a Poilisha Sefer. It's a Poilisha Sefer. It's like Poilisha, Lamdus, Chasidus. It's a certain way of thinking. And he quotes very often the Avnei Nezer. Actually, the Avnei Nezer was the Rebbe of Sachachav. His son was the Shem Mishmol, also the Rebbe of Sachachav. My great-grandfather was a Talmud of the Shem Mishmol. He was the Rav of Sachachav. Actually, what's amazing is, in this piece, he deals with the following question. He says he heard from the Avnei Nezer, there's a pasuk by Sukkah that says Gerim are chayiv in Sukkah. Right? Does a ger have to eat in the sukkah? I mean, you'd say, why not? They have to do all the mitzvahs. There's a special pasuk that Gerim sit in the sukkah. So the question is, why do I need a special pasuk for Gerim to sit in the sukkah and not a special pasuk for Gerim to take a lulav? So the Avnei Nezer said the following Kabbalistic lamdas. This is like classic Polish thought. Okay, the Avnei Nezer said like this. There are two kinds of inspiration. There's something called Isarusa de la'ela, when the influence comes from above, and there's something called Isarusa de lasata, when the influence comes from below. Sometimes God showers us with spiritual influence, and sometimes our actions down here, they create spiritual influence. Sukkah is God showering us with His protection. So it's called Isarusa de la'ela. Hashem is bringing inspiration from above, sanctity from above, spirituality from above. That's Isarusa de la'ela. Lulav is our maisim down here. We're doing this, mystical act, and we're effectuating spiritual force from down here. Isarusa de lasata. Okay, so Sukkah is Isarusa de la'ela, and Daled Minim is Isarusa de lasata. Gerim are the epitome of Isarusa de lasata, because their entire connection to Judaism came from their own initiative. So there is Isarusa de lasata. So of course they would take the Daled Minim, but you wouldn't necessarily think they're eligible to receive that bounty from heaven of Ananei HaKavod. So we have a special Chiddush to Chayv in Sukkah. That's the Avnei Nezer. So he quotes a certain Rav Alexander. That's a good thing you came. Rav Alexander Zusha Friedman. You ever hear of that name? Rav Alexander Zusha Friedman. He wrote what? Very good. He wrote something similar to that. He wrote Mayana Shel Torah. Mayana Shel Torah is like the classic Divrei Torah sefer. When you were bar mitzvah, you probably got a few copies of Mayana Shel Torah, the white book. If you hear a vart, you don't know where it's from. It's probably default in the Mayana Shel Torah. It was written by Alexander Zusha Friedman. He was a chavrusa of Arzeda, the Sachet Shavarav in Sachet. Okay, fine. Rav Alexander Zusha Friedman says, this is why in the Megillah it says, Kiblu aleihem v'al kol hanilvam aleihem. They accepted Purim upon them and all the Gerim. Why on all the Gerim? Why do we need to know that they accepted upon all the Gerim? Because since the way Purim was created was heaven endorsed what they decided down here, Kimu lamala, masha kiblu lamata, so by default, obviously, implicitly, it included the Gerim, who are what we call Isarusa de lasata. Okay. Therefore, says the Avnei Nezer, says the Pardes Yosef, we now understand why we don't take a lulav on Shabbos, but we do sit in the sukkah. Why? What Shabbos? Who creates Shabbos? God. Yom Tov we create. Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. We create the calendar, we make the date, we say it's Shabbos, we say it's Yom Tov, we say it's Pesach, we say it's Shavuos, we say it's Sukkos. We create Yom Tov. Yom Tov is Isarusa de lasata. Shabbos is Isarusa de la'ela. God creates Shabbos. It's Shabbos when Hashem decides it's Shabbos, and Shabbos is over when God takes it away. Therefore, Sukkah is Isarusa de la'ela. So it's consistent with Shabbos. Lulav is Isarusa de lasata. So it's not consistent with Shabbos. That's very nice, but this cannot be a halachic reason. I mean, you can't apply Kabbalistic rationale to explain why we don't take a lulav on Shabbos and we do sit in the sukkah. That might be a philosophy after the fact, but you need a clear halachic reason why we don't take the Daled Minim, but we do sit in the sukkah. But at the very least, the Pardes Yosef asks the question, and he uses the Avnei Nezer to answer it. So once the Pardes Yosef asks the question, we know it can't be too shabby of a question if the Pardes Yosef is dealing with what's the difference between why we don't take the Daled Minim on Shabbos and we do sit in the sukkah. So I want to share with you a few answers. Now, this question was dealt with in a journal, Hamar, in the 49th year of its publication. And a number of answers were given. I want to share a few answers with you. Answer number one. There's a famous question. This young man over here, Naftali, he was born on Shabbos. He was actually born on my birthday. So I was also born on Shabbos. So he had a bris milah on Shabbos. I also did. We were actually born on the same date. The same calendar date. But since I'm his father, I'm older than him. Just want to clarify that. So you're allowed to do bris milah on Shabbos. Why? Why are we goyzer shema yavireno dal ramas? You might have a question. You might bring the kid to a bucky. You might bring the knife to a bucky. Why are you allowed to do bris milah on Shabbos? That's a famous question of the Ran. The Ran wants to know, if you can't take the shofar and you can't take the lulav and you can't take the Megillah, why could you do bris milah on Shabbos? No, good question. Comes the Knesset Hagdoila, and the Knesset Hagdoila says, not a good question. You know why I do milah on Shabbos? Because you have to do milah. It's the 8th day. You got to circumcise. It's Shabbos, but biblically you're allowed to do milah on Shabbos. So then, why are you now to blow shofar? Because you don't know for sure it's Rosh Hashanah. Maybe the second day is Rosh Hashanah. You're now to take a lulav. You know why? Because maybe it's not Sukkos. Maybe the second day is Sukkos. You're not allowed to take the Megillah. Maybe you got the wrong date. Sveika d'Yoma. Milah, there's never Sveika d'Yoma. Milah is the 8th day. So Milah you do on Shabbos. But the Yomim Tovim are a suffix. So you can't do the mitzvah misafek.
Even when we're doing a period.
So you'll say, right, but Zman Hazeh, it's not a suffix anymore.
I'm saying even at the time.
You're saying nowadays it's not a suffix anymore.
Even before it really wasn't a suffix. I'm saying once they established it.
But at least halachically it's treated as a suffix. So once it's treated as a suffix, maybe you can't do the mitzvah. So he says, you ready for this chap, which you'll tell me if you like it. This is all fine and good regarding lulav, because lulav is only a mitzvah one day midaraisa. Shofar is only one day. But when it comes to Sukkah, the second day of Sukkos is definitely Sukkos. The third day is definitely. The fourth day is definitely. The fifth day is definitely. Sixth day is seven. So most of Sukkos you'll be able to do on Shabbos. So since 6 out of the 7 you're allowed to, you would be allowed to do on Shabbos. So they just said you sit in the Sukkah on Shabbos. This year the first day is Shabbos and the first day is a suffix. Yeah, but al pi roiv, in the majority of situations, it's definitely Sukkos. So when it comes to Sukkos, it's like bris milah. You know for sure it's Sukkos. I don't really like this answer. Because then it should come out. Then on day 2 you should sit in the Sukkah. Day 3 you should sit in the Sukkah. Day 4. But if the first day of Sukkah is Shabbos, then you shouldn't sit in the Sukkah. What do you mean, al pi roiv? What do you mean, on the majority of cases, you know what day it is? That's good for those majority of cases. And for the minority that you're masupik, you shouldn't be allowed to sit in the Sukkah. So now I want to come back to this young gentleman's question. What was your first name again? David. Mr. David Pollack. Mr. Pollack wanted to know, why don't we say the following gezerah by Sukkah? Why don't we say you might fix the Sukkah? Let's come back to shofar, because there is a famous kasha of the Mizrahi. Mizrahi is the preeminent commentary on Rashi. Mizrahi wants to know, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, why do we say you don't blow shofar on Shabbos because you might carry? Why don't we say you don't blow shofar on Shabbos because you might fix the shofar? That's why you're not allowed to blow a tuba or a clarinet on Shabbos, because you might fix it. So you shouldn't be allowed to blow the shofar. So there's a taz. This is known as the Taz Hayadua, the well-known Taz. It's so well-known, there's a sefer called HaTaz Hayadua. It's about this comment of the Taz. The Taz says, we can't eliminate shofar lest you come to fix the shofar. You know why? Because then you would never blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Because you're not to blow a musical instrument on Yom Tif. Why? Because you might come to fix it. If we're going to say you can't blow the shofar because you might come to fix it, then you'll never blow a shofar. So then why didn't the Rabbanan say, don't never blow a shofar? Says the Taz, the rabbis don't have the power to completely contravene the Chumash. If the Chumash says do something, the Rabbanim cannot come and say don't do it. They can only say sometimes don't do it. But they can't say don't do it blanketly. So if you're going to be concerned that for a gezerah, lest you come to fix, you'll never blow a shofar b'chlal. You'll never blow a shofar. So therefore, the only way they could abolish shofar is if you might come to carry. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to carry. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to carry. And the Torah doesn't say blow shofar on Shabbos. It says blow shofar. So you blow it on Sunday, on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but not on Shabbos. So the rabbis have the capacity to come up with exceptions to the Chumash. They can't go again, can't fly in the face of a pasuk in the Chumash. So
why do you have to come on to the example of Rabbah?
Yeah.
At least for Sukkos, if the Torah...
You mean the remez?
The Torah said it. The Torah said on that 7th month, which is Shabbos, meaning every time it comes out on Shabbos, for whatever reason, I'm going to because you don't blow the shofar. I mean,
you don't take the daled minim.
You don't take the daled
because it's not clear. I mean, I'm honored that you like the remez so much, but it's not black and white that it's talking about. It reads very well, but we don't have a Gemara that says that this is exactly what the pasuk is saying. It's just a remez or a drush, so it doesn't have the status of a drasha. In other words, it's not like a gzeira shava or a kal v'chomer. It's just a remez. It's a good remez. It's a nice remez. It fits like a glove. Fine. So I want to say like this. You ready? This is my answer. When it comes to not taking the daled minim, what does the Torah say about daled minim? Take the lulav and esrog on the first day of Sukkos. So I will. When it comes out on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Could the rabbi say don't take it on Shabbos? They could do that. But what does the Torah say about Sukkos? It says sit in the Sukkah for how many days? 7! The Chachamim can't come and say, no, just sit in the Sukkah 6 days. They don't have the power to do that. The Torah says 7 days. The rabbis can't go against the pasuk. If the pasuk says take the lulav on the first day, I am in 99% of the cases. The Chachamim carved out an exception. But if the Torah says annually sit in the Sukkah for 7 days, if the Chachamim would say don't sit in the Sukkah because you might carry, then you never sing in the Sukkah for 7 days. I like that. I think that's the best answer. So somebody who wrote this article offered it, but that's what I thought of. Okay. Here's another answer. Another answer is, why would a Jew carry on Shabbos? What are we afraid of? What we're afraid of, somebody's going to get so carried away with the mitzvah, they're going to carry. That's only if they're carrying the item of the mitzvah. So they're going to carry the shofar, they're going to carry the lulav. Are they going to carry the grape juice? The grape juice is not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is a sukkah. The item of the mitzvah is a sukkah. We're not concerned you're going to carry a thing with which to be able to fulfill a mitzvah. We're afraid you're going to carry the item with which you do the mitzvah. That's like a clear distinction. And now I want to share with you my favorite lamdasha answer. Okay, you got to think now. Okay, sorry, but I want to. You got to put on like your lamdasha glasses for a minute. Here you have a guy. You like pizza, Shlomo? You like pizza? Yeah, Shlomo likes pizza. Are you allowed to eat pizza outside of the sukkah? No. Today you're allowed to, right? But on Sukkot, are you allowed to? No. Okay. Very good. What if a person ate out of the sukkah? Are they actively violating an avera, or are they passively violating an avera? What I mean is like this. When the Chachamim say, don't blow the shofar when Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, how do they have the right to do that? The Torah says, blow the shofar. And we know that's even Shabbos. So the Gemara in Yevamah says, Yesh koyach l'chachamim lakar davar min ha-Torah b'shev al tasa. The rabbis are not saying actively violate the Torah. The rabbis are saying passively violate the Torah. You're not actively doing an avera, you're just passively not blowing shofar, passively not shaking lulav and esrog, passively not reading the Megillah. But the Chachamim can't say, oh, eat treif. Chachamim can't say eat treif. The Chachamim can't say we are shatnez. Chachamim can't say do an avera. So now the question is, if they're going to say not to sit in the sukkah on Sukkos, are you if somebody eats their challah out of the sukkah, is it just like not blowing the shofar? Is it just like I'm passively not fulfilling a mitzvah? Or am I actively violating an avera of achila chutz l'sukkah? No, Naftali, you hear the shayla. Is eating out of the sukkah a active violation, or is it just b'shav tasa? What would you say it is? Eating, I'm saying, on the one hand you could say, okay, I'm eating my pizza out of the sukkah. So I'm actively doing an avera. I'm actively doing something against Hashem. Or no, I'm not. What am I doing? What I'm doing is I'm not going in the sukkah. So I'm being passive. I'm not doing an action. Do I look at it that I'm doing an act of eating out of the sukkah, or do I look at it that I'm passively, I'm just like sitting here. I really need to get up and go inside. So it's passive. This is a famous machlokes, Rabbi Kiva Eger and the Pnei Yoshua. In Masechta Sukkah on Daf Chaf Hey, the Gemara says that people who are shluchei mitzvah are exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah because oisek b'mitzvah pater b'na sukkah. The question is not going into the sukkah active or passive? Rabbi Kiva Eger, if you look at number 9, famously says, Ein al achila iser klal shaloi lechel chutz l'sukkah. If you eat out of the sukkah, you're not doing an avera. Eating out of the sukkah, you're not doing an avera. It's just you didn't go and do the mitzvah. You violated not doing the mitzvah. Let's say somebody doesn't wear tefillin, doesn't put on tefillin. They actively did an avera, or they passively didn't put on tefillin. They passively didn't put on tefillin. So, not if you're eating out of the sukkah, Rabbi Kiva Eger says you didn't do an avera. Ela demutal alav l'kayem mitzvah saseh. It is incumbent upon you to fulfill the mitzvah. Sheyia achilase b'sukkah. Vim einoi hoylech l'sukkah lechal achilase sham. If you don't go there to eat, mevatel mitzvah saseh. You're being mevatel a mitzvah. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing is passively not fulfilling a mitzvah. In that case, we have a good question. So the rabbi should come along and say, if Sukkos comes out on Shabbos, don't go into the Sukkah. You might carry. But according to the Pnei Yoshua, he views that if you eat out of the Sukkah, you actively did an Avera. So then the rabbis can't say, they could say don't take a lulav and esek. They can't say, oh, don't eat in the Sukkah, but then I'm going to be eating out of the Sukkah, and that's an active Avera. Rabbis can't do that. No, that's a good answer. Yeah, you're masking? Yeah, he's not. Okay, look at number 10. V'oid nirali, says the Pnei Yoshua, the le'inyan sukkah ika rabusa tvei. The achfa gav de b'chol shavasha oiver al mitzvah saseh the sukkah. V'oid deloy dami l'shar mitzvah saseh. Pnei Yoshua says not like other mitzvah saseh she'enon ela b'sheva al tasa kishabita mehem. Other mitzvah saseh are only passive. Mashein came b'sukkah ika nami isura bekum asay kisha oichel v'shoise v'yashen chutz l'sukkah. If you eat, drink, sleep out of sukkah, you're actively doing it. Then the rabbis can't come and say, oh, if it comes out on Shabbos, you don't have to sin the sukkah. No, they can only say passively don't do a mitzvah. They can't say actively do an avera. Okay, one more answer, okay? And we'll close with this. If you look carefully in the language of Rabbah says, Shema Yavireno Dalet Amos B'Rishus HaRabim. What?
The mitzvah babi de avera, which you don't have by sukkah. If I carry it, if I Dalet Amos, I've committed avera, you can't do a mitzvah.
So that's a big question. Rabbah said you're not allowed to blow the shofar on Shabbos. What if I do? Do I get a mitzvah? So you're saying it's a mitzvah haba ba'avera.
You carry it.
No, let's say I don't carry it. Or let's say I do carry it. Okay. Here's my question. What's Rabbah worried about? You might carry the shofar or the lulav for Amos and Rishus HaRabim. Why does he say that? Why doesn't he say you might take it from a Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaRabim. Right? We know there are two types of carrying. One is you can't take an item 4 cubits in a Rishus HaRabim. Let's say I'm standing in Rishus HaRabim. I'm going to pick an item up, walk 4 amos, and put it down. That's one type of carrying. And another type of carrying is I can't take something from my house and bring it out into the street. So why is Rabbah only afraid you're going to carry something 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim? Why isn't he afraid you're going to take something from Rishus HaYachid and put in the Rishus HaRabim? So Tosfos says, we are never concerned you're going to take something from Rishus HaYachid and bring it to Rishus HaRabim. Because since they're distinct domains, it will remind you not to do that. But in the Rishus HaRabim, it's all one big area, you might forget. So the whole concern is, did you know, the concern is, you might find a shofar in the Rishus HaRabim and carry it 4 amos. Now, I don't know about you, when was the last time you found the shofar in the Rishus HaRabim? We spoke about that, right? Yeah. You might find the lulav. You remember? No, you remember we spoke about it. Naftali remembers. The jokes, you remember all the jokes? Very good. So you might find the lulav, you might find the shofar, you might find Megillas Esther. It happens all the time. Like you're walking down the street and it falls off a tree. They have shofar trees, lulav trees. So if that's the case, if we're not worried, this I didn't see anywhere. We're not worried you're going to find we're not worried you're going to take an item of a mitzvah from the Rishus HaYachid and bring it to Rishus HaRabim. We're afraid you're going to find something in Rishus HaRabim. Then that doesn't apply to a sukkah. Why? Because you can't build a sukkah in Rishus HaRabim. You can't build a sukkah in Rishus HaRabim. It's stealing. Magen Avram writes, look at number 14. Magen Avram says, Tzarchiyin shenagu ktsas anoshim la'asei sukkah b'Rishus HaRabim. I don't understand people make a sukkah in Rishus HaRabim. They don't own the property. V'im kain sukkah gezulahu. You know, there are all these stories. You ever hear these stories? There's a guy, and he put up the sukkah on the roof, and the building department said you can't put it there, and a miracle happened. He said, you know what? They said, you better take it down within 7 days. Right? Remember, that's like a famous story. So everyone thinks it's a beautiful story, but the poor guy, I don't think he was yet to the mitzvah of sukkah, because he wasn't allowed to put it there. It's a mitzvah abba. Okay, but it sounds good anyway. But the Magen Avram paskins, if you put a sukkah in Rishus HaRabim, you can't even make a bracha on it. You're not even yotzei. So what are we going to say? Don't build a sukkah. You can't sit in the sukkah on Shabbos, because why? You might carry. What are you going to carry? We're not worried you're going to carry from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. We're only worried you're going to carry in the Rishus HaRabim. And anyway, there are no kosher sukkahs in the Rishus HaRabim. So to outlaw sukkahs on Shabbos, because you might find the sukkah in the Rishus HaRabim, you can't have it. They don't work in the Rishus HaRabim. Actually, some ask on this Magen Avram, there's a pasuk in Nehemiah that says that when the Jews returned in the times of Nehemiah to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash, it says, look at number 15, Vayetzu ha'am, people went out, Vayaviu, and they brought, Vayasu lahem Sukkos, and they built Sukkos, Ishal Gagai, each one on their roof, Uvachatzoy Seim, and in their courtyards, Uvachatzoy Beis Olekim, and the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, or Verchayv Shar HaMayim, and in the street of Shar HaMayim, or Verchayv Shar Ephraim. So Rav Shlomo Kluger asks, we see you're allowed to make a sukkah in Rishus HaRabim. The Jews did it in the times of Nehemiah. The Malbim, in his commentary to Sefer Nehemiah, points out that a few psukim later it says that the Jews did not build a sukkah in Yerushalayim from the time of Yeshua ben Nun until that day. So the Malbim asks, what? The Jews didn't make sukkahs from the times of Yeshua ben Nun until times of Nehemiah? How's that possible? Says the Malbim, based on the Magen Avram, you can't make a sukkah in a public domain. What's the status of Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim is loy nischalku l'shvatim. It was never given over to Klal Yisrael. It's public area.
Everyone owned it.
Yeah, everyone owned it, and therefore it's a public domain. It's public, and therefore you cannot build a sukkah in Yerushalayim. Period. And therefore, for hundreds of years, the Jews did not build sukkahs. So you say, and what happened in times of Nehemiah? So he says something very interesting. Ezra came up, and we know Kidsha Rishayna, the initial sanctification of Yeshua, Kidsha L'Shaita, it was temporary, but V'loi Kidsha L'Salava, it was not eternal. Ezra came and he sanctified it eternally. However, when he sanctified it, he stipulated that the sanctity is such that people are given permission to build sukkahs. Yeshua ben Nun never did that, because he only did it a temporary sanctification, so he never made any stipulations in the Kedusha. The Malbim therefore says that from the time of Yeshua ben Nun, Yerushalayim had the status of Rishus Harabim, and then in the times of Ezra, when he re-sanctified it, he stipulated that certain stipulations. One of them was that they were allowed to build sukkahs. So, again, I'm suggesting that the reason why you're allowed to sit in a sukkah is because the gezerah of Rabbah is you might carry something in the Rishus Harabim, but there are no sukkahs in the Rishus. You don't build sukkahs in the Rishus Harabim. You might find a shofar. You're allowed to have a shofar in the Rishus Harabim. You're allowed to have a lulav, but you can't have a sukkah. So here's the happy recap. The psukim in Parshas Emor indicate that b'chodesh hashvi hazeh, that when it comes to that first year, only sukkah, not daled minim. Subsequent years, you have both. We asked why. Why is there a gezerah of Rabbah by sukkah, by daled minim, and not by sukkah? So we gave a number of answers. Answer number one, because shofar, lulav, we're not sure if it's Yom Tov, it's Sveika D'Yoma. But most of the 7 days of Sukkos, we know for sure it's Sukkos, except for the first day. I didn't really like that answer, because the first day you shouldn't be allowed to sit in the Sukkah. The second answer we gave, I think is solid, and that is the same way the rabbis can't say never blow shofar because you might fix it, because the Torah says there's a mitzvah of shofar. And likewise, they can't say never sit in a sukkah because you might fix it, because there's a mitzvah of sukkah. They can't say don't sit in a sukkah on Shabbos because the Torah says explicitly sit in the sukkah for 7 days. Third answer is, according to the Pnei Yeshua, that eating out of the sukkah is an active violation. It's not passively not sitting in the sukkah. You're actively doing an avera. The Chachamim can't say go ahead, eat out of the sukkah. That's an active violation of the mitzvah of sukkah. That's answer number 3. And answer number 4 is, the only decree is not you might take something from the Rishus Hayil to Rishus Rabim, so you might have something in the Rishus Rabim. You can't build a sukkah in the Rishus Rabim. Okay, Rabbi Glatstein, thank you very much for coming. I wish everybody a wonderful Yom Tov, Chag Kosher V'Sameach, and we'll see everybody B'ez Hashem, Parshas Bereshis, Wednesday night. Hatzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.